Is the United States about to attack Yemen? Well, this could really throw the entire Middle East into a tailspin. We know that the Red Sea is essentially off limits now to shipping. Maersk has announced that they will stop sending ships through the Red Sea because of attacks from Houthis coming out of Yemen. What will the Biden administration now do? All eyes on Yemen suddenly. And we want to bring in ex CIA analyst Larry Johnson on this, of course, who always has his ears and his keyboard to the grindstone of what's happening in the intelligence community in Washington and what is going on. Larry, good to see you. What is your sense of what the Biden administration, I find it fascinating because over the past few weeks, the Biden administration has really sat back and has even told Israel, don't touch Yemen. Don't touch Yemen. And now suddenly over the past 48 hours, something has changed. What has changed?
Well, let's focus on a couple of things first. The staff around Biden was not telling Biden about what was going on in the Red Sea. I think they were afraid that he would order an immediate attack, and so they were giving him the old mushroom treatment, keeping him in the dark and piling on the manure. Um, but I think part of the reason for the hesitancy is even though these ships appear to be sort of all powerful and a mighty presence, um, they have been expending a lot of munitions, shooting down drones and some of these missiles, and it's not easy to resupply them with that. In fact, these ships, in order to be resupplied, it's not a simple matter of a helicopter flying something in or another ship pulling up alongside and hoisting them over the guardrails. They're going to have to go into a port to be basically refitted. So, that is a concern because they may not have actually enough firepower. Well, what's so remarkable about all of this is the Houthis in Yemen, who were part of this war against, they're a Shia group, and had been involved in a war for 5-6 years against the Saudis. The Saudis are backing the established government, and the United States was involved with that covertly because we saw this as a way to get after Iran, and that conflict really was settled once China and Russia intervened with the Saudis, with the Iranians, got a peace, the war stopped. But now you do have all these missiles that the Houthis still have in their power, and they made a declaration. They were going to fight on behalf of the Palestinians, and have put out a clear warning: any ship that's going to head towards Israel is a prime target, and they made good on that threat. It's sort of remarkable that up to this point, the West has not moved to do anything to sort of keep those sea lanes open. So now I think we're on the threshold of seeing a joint naval force. It won't be just the United States. It reportedly will include Great Britain. The Saudis are supposed to be out there, but they don't have much of a naval force to speak of. And, once again, you're going to get this image of these great powers of the world just pummeling some little third world country into dust. Not a great image. And it's gonna. I think it's gonna create some additional pressure, blowback on the United States.
The hesitancy that I understand from the Biden administration is the targets inside of Yemen would cause a catastrophe by hitting actual military targets, would unleash a furor, the likes of which we haven't seen in a while. And Yemen, or the Houthis, would then respond by attacking targets inside of Saudi Arabia and striking oil targets. This is, of course, the rumblings that we've been hearing. And
Right.
the targets then you would see the Biden administration hitting inside of Yemen to appear like we're strong wouldn't be targets at all, but might be the side of a hillside somewhere. And we're showing strength, but we're not actually hitting any targets. We're not actually hitting any military installations because of the
Right.
response from the Yemeni side. Can you talk about that? Am I right about that, or am I off?
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, the Houthis are not sitting on the equivalent of, say, Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, Fort Ord. They,
Right.
they don't have this massive military infrastructure, and these a lot of the missiles that they're using are mobile systems, so they can move them around. And so we're going to have to devote quite a bit of ISR capability to it. It's just it's adding one more burden onto an already stressed U.S. Navy. Note that the recent reports indicate that they're cutting back on the carrier crew by to the tune of 500-600 sailors. So what that means is they're not fully staffed. They're not going to be able to do the maintenance that needs to be done to keep those ships up and running. They won't have enough trained personnel to operate critical systems. So there are real limitations. And then you get to the issues of resupply of munitions, because it's very cost effective for the Houthis to fire a bunch of drones. Let's say that the drones cost them $5,000 a piece, and the United States will be shooting those $5,000 drones down with an $800,000 $1 million missile. The mathematics work against you pretty quickly. Uh, I don't know if the Houthis are willing to reignite the war with Saudi Arabia, because if they do hit the oil fields, that will reignite it. I think at this point, Iran would be counseling them no, because Iran doesn't see anything in its advantage to getting into a war, a proxy war with Saudi Arabia right now. They've reestablished diplomatic relations. Things are calmer, and they're focused right now on what's happening in the Gaza Strip to the Palestinians.
But meanwhile, the Red Sea, it's a shit show. I mean, let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now you have all of these container ships having to go completely around to make deliveries here instead of going through the Red Sea. They're essentially controlling the Suez Canal. Of course, this was a major fear. This is, of course, something Israel absolutely didn't want, and wants their own canal, of course. And the
Right.
history, you can go back to the Ben Gurion Canal, right? So the Suez Canal has always been a flashpoint, and now it's essentially under the control of BRICS nations, essentially. And this is a major, perhaps, act of war on the part of the Houthis. And it's going to be interesting to see in the next week or so what the Biden administration does. What is your sense of that? Do you think that we are going to launch some sort of a large-scale military strike with the help of the Brits?
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, I think it's going to happen. It is, in terms of international law, this will be a fully justified military response reaction, to protect the sea, keep the sea lanes open. Because it's not just the cargo ships, the container ships. It's also the oil tankers. They're steering clear too, and so that's a significant amount of oil that's not making its way up into the Med, and that'll be a concern both for the countries. It may very well be that even some of the oil is Iranian, or some of it's Saudi. But while it's justified from a military standpoint, the political reaction, I think, is going to be quite the opposite, because again, it's the image of the bully beating up on the kid in the wheelchair. Now, I mean, the kid in the wheelchair may have been obnoxious, but once again, it's the United States. We only have two notes anymore. It's either economic sanctions or it's a military intervention. Diplomacy, gone, died with Henry Kissinger. But because we've become this two-note Charlie, we're being perceived by the world as somebody that is prone to be quick on the trigger. So, the perception management of it is not going to be helped by Joe Biden. I mean, you think Joe Biden coming out to publicly defend it? It's just it's going to reinforce the image of the United States is just dangerous. And so the PR spill out from what's going on in Gaza Strip and in Israel, Palestine, it's all sort of coming to a head. I mean, when you add in that the Israelis killed their own soldiers, that the Israeli snipers shot and killed two Christian women trying to get into a church, and then here are the Houthis, who are like the only one really fighting back. Turkey's not doing anything. Saudi Arabia is not doing anything. Syria, they're all Jordan, they're all sort of standing by. The Houthis are the only ones fighting, and that's that sort of winning them a hero status within the Arab and Muslim world among the people in the street.
Well, I guess we'll see over the next week, just in time for Christmas, another U.S.-led war. That'll be the Biden Christmas present to Americans. Larry, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Clayton.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.